Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another video. Um, currently I'm battling a burden, a sickness. Uh, Not really sure what it is. Probably is the start of a sinus infection, but I'm getting it under control with medicine. So if I sound nasally, it's because I am. And this is something that happens to me basically every month, which is kind of awesome. Kind of awesome. Anyways, so today. Uh, if you're watching this video, I'm gonna be making a couple of videos, like two or three, probably one on severe weather, on fire, and then on flash flooding. Uh, why three? Well, I mean, because there is a lot to talk about. Um, so I want to talk about it. Uh, but anyways, to get into the video, as you see here, uh, I'm looking at a map of sorts, and this is the Storm Prediction Center severe weather outlook. Uh, the Storm Prediction Center essentially forecasts severe weather from day 1 to day 8, from today to 7 days in advance. And they have five, technically six, but it's 0 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, and 5 out of 5. Uh, you can see the risk level is actually down here. Uh, the dark green or 0 is just general thunderstorms. Or I should say the light green 0 is general thunderstorms. The dark green 1 is a marginal. The yellow 2 is a slight. The orange 3 is enhanced. The red 4 is a moderate, and the pink 5 is a high risk. The closer you get to high risk, the higher the coverage and intensity will be for thunderstorms. Uh, Usually, slight risks are taken a little bit less seriously when compared to an enhanced risk. Now, in my opinion, they should both be taken very seriously, and they are both very important, but one is usually taken a little bit less seriously than the other. We should take all severe weather forecasts seriously, no matter what signal is disseminated by the models or the Storm Prediction Center. But anyways, so we have two slight risks of severe weather, one from Minnesota to Wisconsin, and the other from Nebraska and Kansas to kind of like southern Chicago and uh, northern and central Illinois. Be right back. Well, my note. Sorry about that. I'm probably going to be blowing my nose at least a couple times. Uh, but yeah, anyway, like I said, we have two slight risks. One from what's that damn state's name? Minnesota to Wisconsin, and the other from Nebraska and Kansas, all the way to like the southern Chicago city limits and northern and central Illinois. So from parts of the plains to the Midwest. There's also a marginal risk containing Chicago, also very close to Detroit. Actually, it contains Detroit. Uh, from Detroit to Chicago, it goes down through the Ohio Valley, through the Midwest, and through the plains into the Great Lakes region. And yeah, that's that's it. Uh, so we have a 2% tornado risk from Lake Nebraska, basically the Omaha Metro, to just south of Chicago. So from Nebraska to Illinois, um, we have a wind risk with a Sig 1 hatching, a single hatching from Nebraska to Iowa and Missouri, which means that the winds that are produced from these prognosticated thunderstorms will have the potential to cause severe and potentially significant damage. So that's always never good. And then we have two regular 15% wind risks, one spanning from, Minnesota to Wisconsin, which is the mirror image of the northern slight risk, and then the other one from Nebraska and Kansas to Illinois and south of Chicago, kind of basically. It's kind of the same thing, but just not really also. And then we have a hail risk as well. I'm not really going to cover the 5% areas because the marginal risk, uh, there really is not any big threat with marginal risks. Yes, there are thunderstorms, but they're very lackluster and they lose a lot of intensity. Thunderstorms, they lose a lot of intensity when going into marginal risk environments, and marginal risks are usually never super unstable and they never have great wind shear. Uh, they may, but one may be significantly displaced from the other, so that's why I'm just not going to cover. I'm going to cover the most pertinent zones of thunderstorm hazards and stuff like that. Not only for time's sake, but because also my throat is deciding to betray me every now and then with a sore throat a little bit here and there, but it's probably because I've been coughing my brains out all day. Surprised if I don't get Borheeb syndrome in the next couple of hours. But anyways, so disregarding that, there's a hail risk, two hail risks. Again, one from Minnesota to Wisconsin, and the other with a SIG-1 or single hatched risk uh, spanning from Kansas and Nebraska to Iowa and Missouri. And the 15% unhatched goes from Nebraska and Kansas to the Quad Cities and Western Illinois. Northwestern Illinois to be specific. That's that. So there will be a small chance of a tornado or two on the southern periphery. We also have a chance for hail and wind at a significant proportion, enough to be delineated by the Storm Prediction Center. Uh, so yeah, let's read the description. So, summary: thunderstorms with large hail and severe winds are expected to develop late this afternoon and evening from parts of the Central Plains into the mid-Missouri and mid-Mississippi valleys. Strong to severe wind gusts and hail will also be possible in parts of the upper Mississippi Valley, Central Plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Morning surface analysis places a low over northwest Kansas near the intersection of weak Lee troughing and the western edge of a remnant outflow boundary extending across southern Nebraska. Upper 60s and low 70s dew points are already in place east-southeast of the surface low and the outflow boundary. Southerly to southeasterly flow will persist throughout the day, maintaining a large fetch of low-level moisture advection from the southern plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Steeper mid-level lapse rates are also emerging out of the central high plains, spreading gradually eastward over these moist low levels throughout the day. As a result, a corridor of strong to very strong buoyancy is anticipated from south-central Nebraska and north-central Kansas along the Iowa and Missouri border into far west-central Illinois by the late afternoon. Alrighty, so expectation is that the outflow boundary will gradually retreat northward while the cold front progresses slowly southeastward across South Dakota and Nebraska. Convective inhibition is anticipated along both of these boundaries, beginning over north-central Kansas and south-central Nebraska near the surface low at the outflow boundary and cold front intersection. Most guidance indicates this initiation will occur after 0Z or after 7 p.m. Central, but earlier indications appear possible given moist low levels, robust heating, and mesoscale convergence. And recent RAP soundings indicate minimal convective inhibition by 21Z. or rapid refresh models, stuff like that. Once initiation occurs, strong buoyancy or mixed layer convective available potential energy over 2,500 joules per kilogram will support intense updrafts capable of large to isolated very large hail. Modest deep layer shear, with effective bulk shear less than 30 knots, could limit storm organization with a trend towards a more outflow dominant mode. However, the generally modest mid-level flow also suggests that upscale growth into an organized convective line is low. Even so, however, a combo of convergence along the outflow and/or the cold front, as well as modest warm air advection, will contribute to additional thunderstorm development eastward into the mid-Mississippi Valley. The upper Midwest. Recent surface analysis shows a cold front extending from north-central Wisconsin southwestward through central South Dakota. A low exists along this boundary near the North Dakota-South Dakota-Wisconsin border intersection. This low pressure is forecast to track eastward along the front as it gradually shifts southeastward, moving in tandem with a shortwave trough moving through the northern plains into the upper Midwest. Buoyancy will be more limited here than areas farther south, but will still be sufficient for a few stronger, more organized thunderstorms, particularly since the deep layer vertical shear will be stronger. Discrete thunderstorms with large hail as the primary risk are possible early in the convective cycle. Therefore, a trend towards more bowing segments with damaging wind gusts is expected. Multiple rounds of storms are possible, and the overall coverage is expected to be high enough to merit introducing 15% hail and wind probabilities. And lower Michigan, a mesoscale convective vortice associated with an overnight mesoscale convective system is moving across northern Illinois and far southern Wisconsin this morning. Activity associated with this MCV is currently weak and non-severe, but the potential for re-intensification does exist this afternoon as activity moves into northern Indiana and southern lower Michigan. Cloud cover introduces some uncertainty regarding the daytime heating and the resultant buoyancy. However, if sufficient daytime heating occurs, steep lapse rates and mesoscale organization of the system could result in sporadic damaging winds. So that's expected for today. This is for tomorrow. Tomorrow, I actually will be affected by this risk. If you live anywhere from just west of Boston, Hartford, Springfield, Massachusetts, the New York Metro, northern and central New Jersey, all of Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia, Allentown, Scranton, State College, Pittsburgh, Erie, Reading, Lancaster, Lebanon, all of those places in Pennsylvania, including Lake Erie and Ohio, West Virginia, and Maryland, all those places, specifically on the East Coast, will be impacted by strong to severe thunderstorms tomorrow. And there is a slight risk from Canada all the way down into Montana and Montana and North Dakota tomorrow, with a marginal risk extending from Canada to Wyoming and South Dakota, and another marginal extending from the Mexico border to Texas and Oklahoma. The marginal risk in the Northeast extends from Maine to Iowa and Missouri. So please watch out if you live in or near any of the colored areas. This does consist of a 2% tornado threat for western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio, a significant wind threat in the north, with a more probable wind threat in the northeast. Significant versus probable, those are different words to use. Significant as in if a chance of wind occurs, it could be significant, very severe, very damaging. That's what significant means. More probable in this case refers to not so much it being so severe that it can damage things, but that there will be higher probabilities of reports of wind damage and wind intensities and wind gusts. The higher the probability, the higher the frequency of a potential hazard. But the higher the intensity, it does not correlate with probability. It correlates with how strong, how visceral, and how ravaging it is. That's the difference. So we have more significant wind probabilities in the northern plains, but more probable probabilities and more probable instances of wind in the northeast and mid-Atlantic regions. We have a hatched risk of wind from Canada to uh, South Dakota and Wyoming. A random 5%, I shouldn't say random, but a 5% risk of wind from Oklahoma to Texas, and a 30% risk of wind from western Massachusetts down through the New York Metro into New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and a 15% risk of wind extending from just west of Boston all the way to just east of the Indiana-Ohio border. Allentown, Reading, the Poconos, you know, I think Albany may be affected by, Albany and uh, Pittsburgh is also affected. So if you live in Pennsylvania, be very prepared tomorrow for severe thunderstorms. Obviously, if you're closer to central Pennsylvania, it could be worse. If you're also closer to the Interstate 95 corridor, the Philadelphia corridor, uh, it will kind of wane and lessen in intensity. Uh, won't be as intense as thunderstorms that do spawn over central and western Pennsylvania, even eastern Pennsylvania near the 22 US 22 Interstate 78 corridor and the 309 and 476 corridors will also have a higher probability of wind uh, than the Interstate 95 corridor. So that's the wind for tomorrow. The hail for tomorrow, there's a 15% risk of hail in both Pennsylvania and Ohio, and both Montana and North Dakota, with 5% also being shown as the brown areas. Anyways, so that's it for tomorrow. I don't know why the hell it's randomly glitching. The colors, sometimes the Storm Prediction Center could be quite weird. It does stuff like this. Now it's back to normal again. This stupid stuff is weird, to be honest, but I digress. Summary. Scattered severe thunderstorms capable of large hail and damaging winds are possible from portions of the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley into the northeast and over the northern high plains. More isolated occurrences of large hail and damaging winds are possible across parts of the southern plains and the lower Missouri Valley into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Synopsis. The mid-level pattern will amplify on Saturday with a ridge building across the upper Midwest into central Canada, with an amplifying trough across the northeast and another trough across the northwest. A surface low will deepen across southern Quebec during the day, with a cold front extending into the Ohio Valley. A Lee cyclone will also develop across eastern Montana as the mid-level trough advances eastward. The Ohio Valley to the northeast. A cluster of thunderstorms will likely be ongoing Saturday morning across parts of the Ohio Valley. These storms should gradually weaken through the morning as they move east. West-southwesterly low-level flow will strengthen through the morning and as the surface low deepens and the pressure gradient tightens. This will result in moisture advection ahead of the cold front from Ohio into Pennsylvania and New York. Clouds from morning convection will limit destabilization initially. However, once these clouds clear, an uncapped environment with moderate instability is expected to develop rather quickly along the cold front. Continued mid-level ascent and convergence along the front should support thunderstorm development during the afternoon. Moderate or 40 knots of flow aloft should support thunderstorm organization, including the potential for supercells and linear clusters. Large hail and damaging winds will be the primary threats. More widespread wind damage may occur from far eastern Ohio across Pennsylvania and into southeast New York and northern New Jersey, where the strongest instability and shear will be present, and a broken line of storms appear likely. Be right back again. Oh yeah, I sound glamorous today like Taylor Swift. Anyways, northeast Montana and northwest South Dakota, or northwest North Dakota, excuse me. Destabilization will occur during the day across eastern Montana and western North Dakota and southeast as. Let me start that sentence over. Destabilization will occur during the day across eastern Montana and western North Dakota. Uh, uh, excuse me, as southeasterly surface winds strengthen ahead of the deepening Lee cyclone and advect low 60s dew points into the region. As height falls overspread this area, storms are expected to develop by mid-afternoon across central and southeast Montana. As these thunderstorms move into the greater instability to the east and northeast, the large hail and severe wind threat is expected to increase. The strong surface heating, steep low to mid-level lapse rates across the northern plains, combined with the increasing shear, will provide an environment supporting 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts. In fact, some guidance, such as the 12Z NSSL WRF, show a mesoscale convective system with an 80 plus knot rear inflow jet, which could support over 80 mile per hour wind gusts if it were to materialize. Southern Plains. A moist environment with greater than 70-degree dew points will be present across the southern plains on Saturday. Moderate instability is forecast as temperatures cool aloft, with a weak mid-level shortwave trough overspreading the area. This moist, unstable air mass and 30 to 35 knots of shear will support organized thunderstorms, including a few supercells capable of isolated large hail and water-loaded downdrafts or downbursts. That's for tomorrow's risk. Tomorrow's going to be quite crazy. I'm actually going to be going to a birthday party, so I'm not entirely sure if I will be able to make it. Uh, thunderstorms will spawn in the afternoon hours, and the party is from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. So I may live stream on a different account and then just go from there. Uh, who knows? If I can, I will. If I cannot, then it's pretty unfortunate. But family is more important. Family and friends are more important. And the person's birthday party is one of my great friends. Yeah. I'm just glad that I'm going because I know a lot about the weather. But anyways, so if you live in any of the yellow regions that were just displayed on screen, are still being displayed because this thing is being slow. Okay, what the heck just happened? Sometimes sometimes the stuff can be so stupid. Sorry, I technical difficulties here. Uh, my internet is being terrible or something, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. Spoilers, there's just a marginal risk for day 3, so it's nothing too substantial. Uh, okay, what the hell is going on? This is so stupid. There's a marginal risk for the Delmarva area and then a slight risk in North Dakota. Yeah. And there is a significant probability, a great significance of severe weather in North Dakota. Uh, So the main threat is just North Dakota. There's also a marginal risk extending into the Rockies and a marginal risk in the Delmarva vicinity. Uh, so, awesome. Nothing really much to go over. Summary. I'm not really going to read the summary. Because you could read it because it will still be on screen. If you want to pause and read the summary, you can, but I'm going to read everything from the synopsis downwards. So, uh, synopsis. A vorticity maximum and associated jet stream within the base of broader scale troughing from the lee of the Canadian Rockies into the northern intermountain region Sunday morning are forecast to translate into the northern high plains by Sunday night. Meanwhile, a shortwave trough will progress from the lower Great Lakes through southern New England and the mid-Atlantic in tandem with a 40 to 50 knot wind maximum in the mid-levels. At the surface, an area of lower pressure and associated fronts are expected to remain quasi-stationary, quasi meaning almost or almost perfect, over the western Dakotas Sunday, prior to advancing slowly east Sunday night. Elsewhere, a cold front will move through the mid-Atlantic Sunday afternoon. The Northern Plains. A hot and prefrontal air mass is expected to develop Sunday afternoon with steep lapse rates and boundary layer dew points in the 50s to 60s, contributing to moderate instability. Wraparound moisture on the backside of the surface front will support air mass destabilization across portions of eastern Montana into northeast Wyoming as well. The models suggest potentially separate severe thunderstorm regimes evolving across the region Sunday afternoon and evening. Isolated storms appear possible across, or excuse me, isolated thunderstorms appear possible along favored terrain of central Montana into northeast Wyoming, aided by the increased height falls downstream from the approaching vorticity maximum and the jet streak. Additional thunderstorms appear possible along the surface front across the western Dakotas as the strong boundary layer heating erodes the capping. Strengthening vertical shear will support supercells capable of mainly large hail in post-frontal regimes and large to very large hail and severe wind gusts within the prefrontal warm sector. Low-level shear is forecast to strengthen during the evening. However, relatively high LCLs are expected to limit a robust tornado threat. The severe weather threat may continue into Sunday night, especially across western and central North Dakota. Mid-Atlantic. Daytime heating and boundary layer dew points in the 60s are expected to support moderate afternoon instability ahead of the cold front. Latest model guidance suggests isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms will develop along the boundary, aided by forcing for ascent associated with a shortwave trough. Forecast soundings indicate largely unidirectional wind profiles with 30 to 40 knots of deep layer shear, which would favor cold pool organization, with an associated risk for locally damaging wind gusts into early evening. That's for Sunday. This is for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. This thing is being so stupid. God, I hate this thing sometimes. I hate my tablet because sometimes it's pretty stupid. But yeah, anyways, what you just saw flashing on the screen was uh, severe weather risks for Tuesday from the Dakotas to Canada and Wednesday from the Dakotas to Minnesota. So really, the northern plains and Canada will likely get a severe risk, a glancing of severe weather. Day 4, Monday is nothing so far. Same thing for Thursday of next week and Friday of next week as well. The only chances of severe weather are for Tuesday and Wednesday. These two. I don't know why it does this. It's so stupid. We have a lot to talk about. So, day 4, Monday. Ensemble mean and deterministic model solutions are in generally good agreement in the progression of a lead shortwave into central Canada, ahead of an upstream trough evolving along the west coast. I gotta blow my nose. Crap. Okay. That pattern evolution will result in rising mid-level heights across the northern and central high plains. At the surface, a cold front initially from the North Dakota, Minnesota Red River Valley into the central high plains will weaken throughout the day in response to falling pressures over the Rockies. A reservoir of stronger instability is forecast to the south of the decaying front across lower elevations of Kansas and Oklahoma into western Missouri. There is some model signals for early day storms over Nebraska to grow upscale into a mesoscale convective system while moving through the Ozarks. Additional diurnally enhanced thunderstorms appear possible across the central high plains. The mesoscale convective scenario will be contingent on the mesoscale processes not readily evident at this time, while the high plains thunderstorms may be fairly isolated. As such, no area will be delineated. Day 5, Tuesday. The ensemble mean solutions are in relatively good agreement in the continued amplification of the mid-level trough over the western United States, with strengthening southwest flow aloft overspreading the northern high plains. The deterministic models indicate a shortwave trough and associated mid-level jet streak moving from the trough base and into the northern and central high plains Tuesday night. At the surface, there is good ensemble clustering and a deepening Lee cyclone over the northern high plains, with that feature moving into the Dakotas by Wednesday morning. That cyclone will be attended by a cold or Pacific front moving out of the northern Rockies. The models suggest that ample instability will reside ahead of the surface low and frontal system, with the strengthening vertical shear contributing to the potential for an organized severe weather episode over parts of the northern plains Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday night. Okay, so day 6, Wednesday. The ensembles indicate the primary trough axis across the northern Intermountain region into the Sierra Nevadas or Great Basin, with some indication at a lower amplitude disturbance moving through the northern plains. That notion is generally supported by the deterministic models, which indicates a vorticity max and associated jet streak translating through the northern and central plains downstream from the primary trough axis. At the surface, ensemble member low-pressure plots indicate the northern plains surface low developing northeast into Manitoba, with a trailing cold front pushing east through the northern and central plains towards the upper Mississippi Valley. Model guidance is suggesting that strong instability will coincide with more than sufficient vertical shear for supercells, with the overall pattern indicative of a regional severe weather event across the eastern Dakotas into Minnesota, and potentially into the mid-Missouri Valley. Day 7, Thursday, and then we have day 8, Friday of next week. The ensemble mean solutions indicate broad troughing from the interior west into the northern plains. The deterministic solutions begin to vary more significantly in the trough configuration, however all maintain strong mid-level flow from the central high plains into the upper Mississippi Valley. At the surface, there is larger ensemble members spreading in surface low position, though the general consensus suggests that one cyclone in southern Manitoba or northwest Ontario and a secondary low over the central high plains. Both lows will be connected by a southwest to northeast oriented boundary. there is some model indication that the strongest mid-level flow enforcing for ascent will remain displaced to the west-northwest of the effective warm sector. Given that uncertainty, no area will be included. And finally, Friday of next week, the ensemble suggests that a low-amplitude disturbance will traverse the north-central U.S., with upstream troughing lingering across the interior west. In contrast, a number of the deterministic models indicate a relatively deep and closed low moving through the northern plains in the upper Mississippi Valley. In the low levels, there is considerable spread in the position of any surface lows and associated frontal systems, limiting confidence in the location of any severe weather threat. That's it, everybody. That's it for the severe weather. There will be severe weather today, tomorrow, Sunday, and also Tuesday, Wednesday, and potentially on Monday, Thursday, and Friday. So, awesome. In a sarcastic way, of course. That is it again for today's video. Get out of here, everybody.